you, my coffee friend. So, what's your favorite way of drinking coffee? You've been a coffee grower for a long time. I'm curious to learn what's the way you drink your coffee every morning.
Oh, hi! Yes, you're talking to me? Yeah, well, I've been growing coffee for a long time now, and actually the way I drink my coffee every morning is basically instant coffee with milk and sugar.
What? What a lack of love for his coffee. How can he do that? Instant coffee? Really? A coffee farmer? Oh my god.
I know what you're thinking. That can't be right? How can a coffee farmer drink instant coffee when he produces the most amazing coffee right at his farm? Well, let me just tell you, it happened. And I know that because I grew up in a coffee farm drinking instant coffee along with my family. We were growing the most amazing coffee, and every morning we will get up and drink instant coffee. Well, let me clarify, not all of the farmers drink instant coffee, but many of them do. In Colombia, for example, most of the coffee is produced by small shareholder coffee farmers, and these small farms are run by nuclear families who live up in the mountains in the farm and usually are the ones working directly on the fields and growing the coffee. For these families, the situation is a little different from those coffee producers that own much larger pieces of land or much larger farms and that are able to pay for workers and people to manage the farms and that sometimes don't even live at the farm but have someone that can manage it. These small coffee producers are at the farm all the time and usually are coffee farmers that have been growing coffee for many generations and that didn't have access to education, and the only thing that they have known is how to grow coffee, and they've always lived in the countryside growing their coffee. So even though not all coffee farmers drink instant coffee, many of them do. And one of these reasons is not the fact that they want to sell the coffee rather than consume it because they prefer to have the money. I have heard this before, and this is something that people normally think when they hear coffee producers don't drink their own coffee but rather consume cheaper coffees, mostly instant coffee. Throughout my coffee career as a coffee farmer initially and now as a coffee importer, I have heard several people judging coffee producers because of the fact that they don't consume their own coffee. And I've come to realize that they do this because they don't understand what is really happening in the lives of those coffee farmers and why they are not really able to consume their own coffee, or why this is not as easy as it sounds. Because even though I believe that coffee producers should have the right to drink their own coffee and the ability to process their coffee all the way up until the cup of coffee so that they can enjoy the results of their hard work, I also understand that for many coffee producers this is not yet possible. In my case, for my family, we now drink only our coffee. My parents have learned the process of roasting, grinding, and doing the whole process that comes after the green coffee in order to get a delicious cup of their own coffee. And this has helped them tremendously in the process of learning what their coffee tastes like, what it should taste like, what it can taste like, which has also amplified the opportunity for them to decide on which changes to make in order to make their own coffee better, which is not the case with many other small coffee producers. So let me try and explain in a short way why small coffee producers are still drinking instant coffee up until this point and what we can do to change that. Here is the thing, for many of us, it is really easy to make a cup of coffee every morning. As coffee consumers, we can buy a pound of roasted coffee, take it home, grind it, brew it, and make a delicious cup of coffee for us every morning. It is not difficult, it doesn't take a whole amount of time, and for us, coffee is just something that we need to have every day and that is really easily accessible.
You know, my friend, you're a coffee farmer. You really should be drinking your own coffee.
Well, I don't really know how to do that. I'm not sure how to prepare the coffee. I saw the parchment, but how do I make a cup of coffee from that? Maybe you can teach me?
Yeah, of course. Well, the first thing you will need is the green coffee. So, parchment coffee is not gonna work, so you're gonna need to hull it. Do you have a hulling machine?
No, I don't have a hulling machine. Those are very expensive. But maybe I can do it by hand. It will take me like an hour to hull a pound of coffee, but I can try and do it by hand.
Okay, and then after that we have to roast it? Do you have a roasting machine or someone that can roast it for you? Or maybe you can roast it on a pan on the stove. I've heard people that done that before.
Roasting machine? Yeah, no, I don't have that. And I don't know anyone that can do that for me. That's probably expensive. I don't have money to spend on that. But I do have a stove and a pan.
Well, I guess you could buy roasted coffee, although I guess that would defeat the purpose of roasting your own coffee. Well, anyways, do you have a brewer, a coffee brewer, to make the coffee?
Coffee brewer? No, I don't have that either. Those are expensive. But maybe we can put it on a pot with water and just throw the coffee in there.
Yes, you can do that, but then you need a filter. How are you gonna filter it? Because you don't want to have all those grounds floating on your coffee.
Oh yeah, I need a filter. I don't have a filter, but we can do like a piece of cloth or something.
Okay, but you know what? You're also going to need a grinder to grind the coffee so that you can brew it.
A grinder? Oh my god, do I need all of those things? I don't have a grinder either, but I guess we can use the grinder for the corn that we use to make the arepas. That should work.
Yeah, I guess that should work. That's a lot of work for a cup of coffee.
Let's be real. If we have to do all of that work every day to make a cup of coffee, would you make a cup of coffee for you every morning? I don't think so. It is a lot of work and it wouldn't even be the best cup of coffee. It is easier for them to just drink instant coffee. So here is the thing. To make a good cup of coffee from their own coffee plantation, a coffee farmer will need the following. A coffee huller, because remember that they only sell the coffee as parchment, so most of them don't have a coffee hulling machine. Let's just pretend that they buy a coffee huller. A small one, just for their personal use and consumption. Small coffee hullers run in Colombia for about 3 million pesos new and 1.5 million pesos used. I bought one used for 1.5 million pesos so that I could hold samples, and this is how much it cost me. They will also need a coffee roasting machine, a coffee grinder, and a coffee brewer. So let's just pretend they use a pot in the stove, because who has the money to buy a coffee roasting machine, right? So if we add all of these up, at the end of the day, the farmer will need about 1,750,000 pesos in order to buy the basic stuff that they will need in order to grow and drink their own coffee. But here is the thing. The minimum wage in Colombia today is around 877,000 pesos. So you do the math. It doesn't add up, right? It doesn't make any sense for a coffee producer to spend more money that he makes per month into buying these things. These things for a coffee producer will be a leisure, something very fancy that they will only buy if they have extra money. To that, you can add the fact that they don't really know how to properly roast or brew coffee, so they will need to learn this. It is a learning process and they will need someone to teach them. And you could say, okay, fine, they don't need to buy all of those tools. They can roast the coffee on the stove, grind it on the arepa grinder or in the blender, and then they can boil water and pour the coffee on the water and do an immersion method and then filter the coffee with a colander or a piece of cloth. But really, who has time to do that? Why does someone has to go through so much trouble to have a cup of coffee, especially if you grew the coffee? So this is why most small coffee producers end up just buying instant coffee. It's cheaper than if they buy roasted coffee, much cheaper. It is way easier to prepare. Our morning cup of coffee is taken by granted for many of us, but for the coffee producers that grow that coffee that you drink, it is considered a leisure.
I mean, how crazy is that?
So before you drink your cup of coffee, think of that. You have the privilege of drinking an amazing cup of coffee that probably the coffee producer that grew that coffee has not. Ask yourself, what can I do so that the person that grew this coffee has the same opportunity than me to drink it and experience it the way I do? I know you might think that there is nothing that you can really do being you in a consuming country and the coffee producer far, far away from you, and so many times you don't even know who grew the coffee. But based on what I've learned, I'm going to tell you a few things that I believe you can do in order to make this happen. First, purchase responsibly sourced coffee. When you buy a coffee that is responsibly sourced and 100% traceable, you are able to contact that coffee producer directly and speak maybe with the buyer or the importer that bought that coffee from the coffee producer and ask them these types of questions. Do these coffee farmers taste their coffee? Do they know what their coffee tastes like? What can we do so that they can get educated on how to do this? If you're a coffee roaster, you have the knowledge on cupping and tasting, and you could teach that to a coffee farmer. Or you can tell your coffee importer, the person that's buying the coffee from the producer directly, what are they doing in order to educate the coffee farmers, and how can we help buying direct traded coffee, relationship coffee, coffees that are sustainable and that you know where they come from, allow you to make an impact into the lives of those coffee farmers. When you know as a coffee farmer how much your coffee is worth because you've tasted it and you know that it's good, you have the power to negotiate when a future buyer comes in. If you don't know if your coffee is good or not, someone can really take advantage of you as a coffee producer very easily. And in my opinion, that has been happening a lot because coffee producers don't really know that their coffee is valuable, or don't really know if their coffee is good, or how to improve it, or how the things that they do in the field impact the flavor. If you are not tasting, you don't really see the connection in between what you're doing and what's going on the cup of coffee. Please keep in mind that the information I presented was based on my experience as a coffee producer in Colombia, so I cannot speak for the experiences of coffee producers in other countries. If you do know that information, please leave it in the comments below because I would love to learn. If you have any other questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below as well. But that's all for today. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time. Adios!